Alright, so that was a little preview of how to work the mattress stitch in case you don't want to watch the more in-depth part of this tutorial. But in this video I'm going to be showing you step by step how to work the mattress stitch, which is essentially a seaming technique where you seam two panels of crochet together. And this is what it looks like. Obviously you can see that I've used a different color here, a contrast color, but obviously you can use the same color as your project to make this a more invisible seam. So if you want to learn how to work this stitch, the mattress stitch, then go ahead and keep on watching. Okay, so to begin, I've just worked up these two little rectangles just using regular double crochet, but obviously you can mattress stitch no matter what you have been working. So again, for me, I'm just using these little rectangles that are made with double crochets, but this seaming technique works with any crochet stitch. So to begin, I'm going to make sure that both my little squares are facing the same direction. So by that I mean that their right sides are facing me or their wrong sides. It doesn't really matter right now because these are just, regular double crochet squares. But your pattern should tell you, to have the right sides together, wrong sides together. Typically you'll have your right sides together so that your seam is on the outside. So once I have, these my panels facing the direction I want them to be facing, I'm going to place them one on top of the other like this, because I'm going to be seaming the last row of each little square together. So I'm going to line up my little squares like this so that the stitches at each square line up. Now to begin seaming, I'm going to be using a contrast color, so I'm going to be using this blue color just so that you can see what I'm doing a little bit better, but usually you would be using the same color as your project. And here as well I've cut an extra piece to seam, but sometimes for your project you can even just use the tail end of your yarn. So your pattern might say, once you've worked your last row, cut an extra long tail to seam your pieces together. So that's what I usually like to do so that I don't have to cut an extra piece of yarn. But again, for this video, I cut an extra piece of yarn so that you can see what I'm doing. So now, to begin mattress stitching, we're essentially going to be weaving our needle back and forth through each piece of crochet that we want to seam together. So to begin, I'm going to insert my needle through this first stitch of my top square. I don't know if you can see right here. I'm going to insert my needle through both loops of this little square, and I'm going to pull through. And obviously I'm not going to pull all the way through right now so that my yarn doesn't come out. So that's the first step. Now I'm going to insert my needle into this bottom square, this bottom panel, and I'm going to insert it again in this direction. I'm just going to insert my needle and pull through, just like this. And that's your first mattress stitch. We've just completed one stitch. So essentially you're going to be inserting your needle from the inside outwards. So by inside I mean where your seam lies to the outside of your project, right? So to the bottom of this panel. So I'm going to insert my needle into the next stitch of this top little crochet square, and I'm going to insert it into this next stitch going from the inside, so this part where our seam will lie, to the outside of my work. So inside to the outside, going through those two loops of that stitch. So I'm just going to pull my darning needle just like that. Now for the next step, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go from inside to outside into this second square of my crochet and into the next stitch here, as we can see, from the inside to the outside, just like that. And I'm going to pull my needle through. And obviously, I didn't anchor this piece of yarn here, but you want to do a little tug after you've completed each stitch, just to make sure that your seam is nice and secure. You don't want to pull too tightly because then otherwise your work will kind of cinch at the seam. So if you feel like you've pulled a little too tightly, no worries, you can just give your work a light tug and it'll come nice and loose. So let's do that again. We can see that I have to work into this next stitch. So I'm going to go from inside to outside, insert my hook into that next stitch, or sorry, insert my needle into this next stitch from the part where the seam will lie to the outside of my work, and just pull my needle through. And now I can repeat the same step on this side, inserting my needle into the next stitch from inside to outside. So that's basically all the mattress stitch is. You're just weaving from one side of your work to the other side. And I like this seaming method a lot because I think it helps the seam lay nice and flat. There's other seaming methods that essentially make the seam kind of bulky and make it be, yeah, essentially lumpy. And so I think this is a great seam to keep your work nice and flat. One tip that I actually use all the time is instead of working flat like this, you can definitely do that, and it's very easy to see where you need to work your next stitch into. I usually like to hold whatever I'm seaming together just like this, you know, so one part is in the front and one part is in the back, and then I can continue mattress stitching just like this, and I can also see, you know, what stitch I need to work into next. So once I hold it like this, I'm going from inside to outside into this next stitch and pulling my darning needle through. Then I go into the next stitch on the other side of my work, going from inside to outside just like that. So I actually find that holding my work this way is a little bit easier for me when I'm working the mattress stitch, but you know, you should do whatever is comfortable for you. Again, if working flat is easier for you, then just work flat. But I definitely find this method a little bit easier to work into, and quicker too if I'm holding it just like this. But yeah, essentially mattress stitch is just going from inside to outside on both sides of your work, passing the needle through, and again, this creates a nice flat seam for you to sew both of your panels or whatever you're seaming together. And yeah, as you can see, it's very easy, and obviously you can see what it looks like because I'm using a different color. But if you were using the same color as your project, you really couldn't tell much of the difference of where your seam is and where your work is. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up and show you what it looks like when I am done. So right now I'm just working my last part of my last mattress stitch just right here, and this is what my stitch is looking like. But usually to finish it off, you know, let's say I've gotten to the end of my work, I like to secure this part just by working a whip stitch at the end and then passing my needle through that loop to secure it nice and tightly. And so this is what the mattress stitch ends up looking like. But again, it lays nice and flat on your work and doesn't create a bulky seam at all. And so this is what it looks like on the wrong side of your work, you know, where the seam is quite visible, and you know, it's a little less visible on this side, especially if you're using the same color as your project. But yeah, this is what it looks like. And I find this seaming technique very handy, especially for garments, just for the main reason that it doesn't create a bulky seam. I hope you found this video useful, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'll try to get back to you. But yeah, thanks so much for watching my video, and if you liked it, feel free to give this video a like and subscribe for more free tutorials. Thanks so much and have a lovely day.